Amelia Bishop stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing a stubborn spot on a wine glass, her fingers numb from the icy water. She stared out the window at the lifeless garden, dead leaves scattered across the frost-bitten grass. The air inside felt stale, heavy with the remnants of last night's argument. The silence was suffocating. Her husband, Daniel, sat at the dining table behind her, scrolling through his phone, his jaw clenched tight. She watched his reflection in the window, his fingers tapping erratically against the screen. He hadn't spoken to her since he threw his plate into the sink and stormed upstairs. Amelia's chest tightened. She could feel it, the widening chasm between them. It had been growing for months, maybe longer, but she never imagined it would lead to this. "Will you at least look at me?" she asked, her voice cracking. Daniel exhaled sharply, setting his phone down. His eyes met hers, cold and distant. "I don't know what you want me to say, Amelia. I want you to tell me the truth." She dried her hands and turned to face him, her heart pounding. "I found the messages, Dan. From her." His expression faltered, a flicker of panic before he regained his composure. "You went through my phone? You've been lying to me for months. I had to know the truth." Her voice was firmer now, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Who is she?" He looked away, his shoulders sagging. "It's not what you think." "Don't insult me by pretending it's innocent," she snapped. "You told her you loved her." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his fingers trembling. "Amelia, I never meant for any of this to happen." She felt the air leave her lungs, her knees weakening. "You love her?" "It's complicated." He looked at her, his eyes pleading. "I was lonely. We were drifting apart. I didn't know how to fix us." Amelia's vision blurred as tears welled up. "So you found someone else? That's how you decided to fix us?" "It wasn't like that. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did." She stepped back, as if distance could protect her from the pain. "Who is she, Dan?" He hesitated, his face contorted with guilt. "Emily! From work!" The room spun. Amelia gripped the counter, her nails digging into the wood. She remembered Emily, bright, beautiful, and always laughing at Daniel's jokes at the office Christmas party. How could she have been so blind? Did you sleep with her?" The question came out as a whisper, her voice shaking. Daniel's face went pale. He didn't answer. Amelia's stomach twisted, bile rising in her throat. "Oh my God." "It's over," he said quickly, his voice desperate. "I ended it. It was a mistake, Amelia, a stupid, horrible mistake." She stared at him, her chest aching. "You destroyed us for a mistake?" "I never stopped loving you." His eyes were red, his hands trembling. I lost my way. I'm sorry, Amelia. I'll do anything to make this right." But his words hung hollow in the air, echoing through the silence. Amelia turned away, tears streaming down her face. She didn't know if anything could ever make this right. Chapter 2. Shattered Reflections. Amelia sat alone in the darkened living room, the only light coming from the dim glow of the street lamp outside. She clutched her phone, her fingers hovering over Emily's contact information. She had saved it after finding the messages, her mind spinning with questions, accusations, and the need for answers. She wanted to confront her, to scream at her for destroying everything. But she couldn't bring herself to press call. What would it change? Would hearing Emily's voice help her understand why Daniel betrayed her? Or would it only deepen the wound? The floor creaked behind her, and Daniel's silhouette appeared in the doorway. "I couldn't sleep." Amelia didn't respond. She watched his reflection in the window, his shoulders slumped, his face hollow. She wondered how long he had been lying to her, smiling to her face while loving someone else. behind her back. Amelia, please, say something, he whispered, his voice raw. She turned to face him, her eyes cold. I don't even know who you are anymore. His face crumbled, tears glistening in his eyes. I'm still me. I'm still the man who loves you, who loves us. You're a liar, she said, her voice steady. You lied to me, to our friends, to yourself. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? He took a step closer, his hands reaching out. I made a mistake. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. But I need you to know, it was never about you. Amelia laughed bitterly, her heart breaking. How comforting. So, you didn't betray me because of something I did? You just did it because you wanted to? He flinched, his shoulders sagging. I was weak. I was stupid. But I never stopped loving you, Amelia. Please, don't give up on us. She looked at him, the man she once trusted with her heart, now a stranger. You gave up on us the moment you touched her. Amelia sat across from her best friend, Lydia, at their favorite cafe, staring blankly at the untouched latte in front of her. The aroma of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon hung heavy in the air, mingling with the low hum of distant conversations. But all Amelia could hear were Daniel's words echoing in her head. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth it. Lydia leaned in, her brows knitted with concern. Have you decided what you're going to do? Amelia shook, her head, her shoulders sagging. I don't even know where to begin. Part of me wants to rip up the divorce papers and try to fix things. But another part of me wants to watch him suffer. Lydia's expression hardened. He deserves to suffer. I never liked that Emily girl. I can't believe he did this to you. Me neither. Amelia's voice wavered, her chest tightening. I keep replaying everything in my head, searching for signs I missed. But no matter how many times I go over it, I just don't understand why. Lydia reached across the table, squeezing Amelia's hand. You didn't do anything wrong. He made this choice. It's on him, not you. Amelia's eyes stung with tears, her hands trembling. But why wasn't I enough? Oh, honey. Lydia moved to sit beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Don't do that to yourself. This isn't about you not being enough. It's about him being selfish. Amelia leaned into her friend, letting the tears fall. She hated feeling so broken, so powerless. He said he was lonely, that we were drifting apart. But why didn't he just talk to me? Why didn't he give us a chance to fix it? Because he's a coward, Lydia said sharply. And now he's trying to make excuses to save himself from feeling guilty. Amelia pulled back, wiping her eyes. He says he wants to fix things, that he'll do whatever it takes. But I don't know if I can forgive him. Lydia's face softened. You don't have to decide that today. Take your time. Do what's best for you. Amelia nodded, her heart aching. But deep down, she wondered if she'd ever truly be able to forgive him, or if she even wanted to. Chapter 5. The other woman, Amelia, stood outside the glass office building, her heart thudding painfully in her chest. She watched the revolving door spin, her eyes searching the stream of people exiting. She didn't know what she would say or what she wanted to hear, but she needed answers. Finally, she saw her. Emily, laughing with a co-worker, her glossy auburn hair cascading over her shoulders. She looked so normal, so carefree. How could she carry on so easily, knowing the devastation she had caused? Amelia's hands curled into fists as she approached. Emily! Emily's laughter died, her eyes widening. Amelia! She glanced around nervously. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you, Amelia said, her voice cold. Now, Emily swallowed, her face paling. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't care what you think, Amelia snapped. You owe me this. After everything you've done, you at least owe me that. Emily's shoulders slumped, her eyes filled with shame. Okay, let's go somewhere private. They walked to a small park nearby, finding a bench beneath a leafless tree. Amelia stood, her arms crossed tightly. She could feel her heart racing, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "How long?" Amelia demanded, her eyes locked on Emily. "How long were you with him?" Emily looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. 6 months. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. 6 months? Her voice shook. "And you knew he was married? You knew he had a wife at home who loved him?" Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "I never meant to hurt you, I swear. I never wanted this." "But you did it anyway," Amelia shot back, her voice dripping with venom. "You played with my life like it meant nothing. You took what was mine." Emily's face crumbled, tears spilling over. "I fell in love with him. I couldn't help it. He was everything I ever wanted." Amelia's jaw clenched, fury burning through her. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to justify what you did. You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed my life." Emily wiped her eyes, her shoulders shaking. "I never asked him to leave you. I never tried to take him from you. But I loved him, and I thought maybe he loved me too." Amelia felt the ground sway beneath her. "Did he? Did he tell you he loved you?" Emily hesitated, her lip trembling. "Yes, he did." Amelia's heart shattered, her vision blurring. She stumbled back, her legs weakening. "You're lying. He wouldn't say that." "I'm sorry," Emily sobbed. "I never wanted to be the other woman. I never wanted to be this person. But it happened, and I can't change it. I wish I could take it all back." Amelia's body trembled, anger and grief swirling inside her. She looked at Emily, this woman who had stolen her husband's heart, and felt a surge of disgust. Amelia stood in front of the mirror, staring at her own reflection. Her eyes were swollen, dark circles etched beneath them from countless sleepless nights. She barely recognized herself anymore, the woman who used to smile easily, who believed in love and trust. She touched her face, her fingers cold. Who am I now, she wondered? A wife? A victim? A fool? The bathroom door creaked open, and Daniel appeared in the doorway, his face pale, eyes red-rimmed. "Amelia, can we talk?" She met his gaze through the mirror, her shoulders stiffening. "About what?" He stepped inside, his movements slow and cautious, as if approaching a wounded animal. "About us. About what happens next." Amelia turned to face him, her arms crossed protectively. "You should have thought about that before you destroyed us." Daniel flinched, the guilt etched deep into his features. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But I don't want to lose you. I can't imagine my life without you." She looked away, her jaw tightening. "You should have thought about that before you gave her what was mine." His shoulders sagged, defeat washing over him. "I don't have any excuses, Amelia. What I did was unforgivable, but I need you to know I never stopped loving you." She let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow. "Funny. You sure had a funny way of showing it." "I was stupid," he whispered, his eyes pleading. "I was lonely, and I was weak. I should have talked to you instead of running to her. I should have fought for us." Amelia's heart clenched, the anger twisting with sorrow. Why didn't you come to me? I would have listened. I would have fought for you." His face crumpled, tears welling in his eyes. "I was scared. I was scared you'd stopped loving me, that I was losing you, and I was too much of a coward to face it." She felt her resolve wavering, her emotions colliding in a chaotic storm. You lost me the day you chose her, she said, her voice cracking. You took everything we built and threw it away. How am I supposed to trust you again? I don't expect you to trust me. Not right away, Daniel admitted, his voice trembling. But I want to earn it back. I want to prove to you that I'm still the man you fell in love with. Amelia's chest tightened, memories flooding her mind, of laughter, of whispered dreams, of nights spent wrapped in each other's arms. She had loved him with everything she had, and he had shattered her. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. I don't know if I even want to try. Daniel's face fell, his shoulders trembling. I understand. And if you want me to leave, I will. But please, don't shut me out completely. Let me prove that I can be better. That we can be better. Amelia looked at him, seeing the raw vulnerability in his eyes. She could see his remorse, his desperation. But was that enough? Could she rebuild her life with a man who had betrayed her so deeply? She didn't have an answer. Not yet. Leave, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need space. I need time to figure out if I can even look at you without feeling broken. Daniel's face crumpled, but he nodded, his shoulders slumping. I'll give you all the time you need. But I won't give up on us. He turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Amelia sank to the floor, her body shaking with silent sobs. She was alone, and yet his presence lingered, like a ghost, haunting her every thought. Chapter 8. Seeking answers, the next morning, Amelia found herself standing outside Emily's apartment building again, her heart pounding. She had promised herself she wouldn't come back here. But she needed answers. Answers only Emily could give. This time, Emily opened the door with swollen eyes, her face pale. She looked fragile, haunted. Amelia. I didn't think you'd come back. Amelia's jaw tightened. I have questions, and I need you to be honest with me this time. Emily hesitated, guilt shadowing her features. I'll try. I owe you that much. Amelia stepped inside, her eyes scanning the apartment. It was simple, clean, ordinary, just like Emily. She hated how normal it all looked, how nothing seemed out of place. How could this woman have upended her entire life and then returned to this normalcy? They sat across from each other, an awkward silence hanging between them. Finally, Amelia spoke. Did he ever tell you he was going to leave me? Emily looked down, her fingers twisting nervously. No. He never promised me that. He always said he was confused, that he didn't know what he wanted. Amelia's stomach churned. Confused? Was that all their marriage meant to him? A complication he didn't know how to solve? Did you love him? Amelia asked, her voice trembling. Emily's face fell, tears brimming in her eyes. Yes, I did. But I was stupid to think he could ever be mine. I knew he loved you, even when he was with me. It was always you. Amelia's heart twisted painfully. Amelia sat on the park bench, the winter wind biting at her cheeks, carrying the distant laughter of children playing. She watched them run, carefree, their faces bright with innocence. How long had it been since she felt that lightness, unburdened by betrayal and doubt? Her phone buzzed, breaking her reverie. A message from her mother. I heard about Daniel. Are you okay? Do you need to come home for a while? Amelia's fingers hovered over the screen. She could almost hear her mother's voice, warm and comforting, urging her to leave it all behind, to start over somewhere safe, somewhere familiar. But that wasn't the answer. Running away wouldn't heal the scars. It would only bury them, waiting to resurface someday. Her gaze drifted to the wedding ring on her finger, the silver band that once symbolized unbreakable promises. She slid it off slowly, feeling the cold metal leave her skin. It left behind a faint indentation, a mark of where it had been. How could something so small carry so much weight? Her thoughts spiraled, memories flashing before her eyes. Daniel's smile on their wedding day, his laughter echoing through their home, his whispered, "I love you," before bed. Were they all lies? Or were they just complicated? Her chest tightened as another memory surfaced. That night when he had come home late, smelling faintly of perfume, his shirt slightly wrinkled. He had brushed it off as a long meeting, too tired to notice her questioning eyes. How long had she been blind? Her phone buzzed again, another message, this time from Daniel. "Can we talk? Please. I need you to hear me out." Amelia's fingers clenched around the phone, the familiar sting of betrayal washing over her. Did she even want to hear his excuses? Would it change anything? And yet, her heart whispered that she needed closure. One way or another, she had to confront the man who broke her. Chapter 10. Confrontation. Amelia agreed to meet Daniel at the cafe where they used to go every Sunday morning. She arrived early, choosing a seat by the window. Snowflakes danced outside, settling softly on the street. When Daniel walked in, she was struck by how tired he looked. Dark circles under his eyes, his shoulders slumped. He spotted her and hesitated, his face tightening before he approached. "Amelia," he greeted, his voice cautious. "Thank you for meeting me." She didn't respond, her eyes cold as he sat across from her. There was a painful silence before she finally spoke. "Why did you do it?" His face crumbled, shame washing over him. I was lost. I was stupid. And I convinced myself that it didn't mean anything, that it was just a distraction." A distraction from what? Me? Her voice wavered, anger flickering beneath the surface. "Was I not enough for you?" "No," he said quickly, his eyes wide with desperation. "You were everything, Amelia. That was the problem. I felt like I was failing you, like I wasn't good enough. And instead of being honest, I ran to someone who made me feel important." She looked at him, her heart aching. "So you cheated because you felt insecure? You shattered me because of your own self-pity?" Daniel's head dropped, his shoulders trembling. "I know how it sounds. I know it's not an excuse, but I never stopped loving you. I was just weak." Amelia's chest tightened, the pain overwhelming. "And what about her? Did you love her?" His face twisted, conflicted. "No, I cared about her, but it wasn't love. It was a mistake. One I wish I could undo every single day." Silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Amelia looked down at her hands, the indent of her wedding ring still visible on her finger. "You destroyed everything we built. For nothing." Daniel's eyes glistened with tears. "I know. And I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm asking for a chance to make it right, to try and fix what I broke." Amelia's throat tightened, her vision blurring. "How am I supposed to believe you? How can I ever trust you again?" Daniel's voice broke, his vulnerability raw. "I don't know, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need. Just don't give up on us. Please." Amelia felt the weight of his words, the sincerity in his eyes. She wanted to believe him, to hold on to the love they once shared. But the pain was too fresh, the wound still bleeding. "I need time," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I need time to figure out if I even want to try." Daniel nodded, his face crumpling with relief. "I'll wait, for as long as it takes." I won't give up on us. Amelia looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. I used to believe we were unbreakable. I don't know what to believe anymore. Daniel's face fell, the reality of his actions crushing him. I'm so sorry, Amelia. I'm sorry for everything. She stood up, her body heavy with exhaustion. Sorry doesn't fix it. And I don't know if I can be whole again. She walked away, her heart shattered. Amelia stood in front of the mirror, her reflection pale and weary. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, remnants of sleepless nights haunted by memories and questions. She brushed her fingers against the faint indentation where her wedding ring used. To rest, its absence a constant reminder of everything that had been lost. She took a deep breath, bracing herself. Today would be different. Today, she would confront the shattered pieces of her heart. She found herself standing outside the therapist's office, the same place she and Daniel had gone when they first struggled to communicate. Back then, it was about work stress and feeling disconnected. Now it was about betrayal, broken trust, and the impossible question of forgiveness. The door opened, and a familiar voice called her name. Amelia, come on in. Dr. Thompson's office was warm, decorated with soft pastels and serene paintings. Amelia sank into the plush chair, the weight on her chest easing just slightly. How are you feeling today? Dr. Thompson's voice was gentle, her eyes kind. Amelia hesitated. Words tangled in her throat. I don't know. Lost, I guess. I can't stop wondering. Was any of it real? Dr. Thompson leaned forward. What makes you question that? Her voice wavered. If he loved me, how could he do this? How could he lie to my face and come home to me every night? The pain surged again, raw and jagged. He says he wants to fix it, to earn my trust back. But I don't know if I can believe him, or if I even want to. That's understandable, Dr. Thompson said softly. Infidelity shatters the foundation of trust. Rebuilding that takes time, patience, and honesty. But first, you need to decide what you want, not what he wants or what others expect, but what you need to heal. Amelia stared at her hands, her fingers twisting together. I used to be so sure of everything, of us. But now, it's like I don't even know who I am without him. Dr. Thompson's gaze was empathetic. It's normal to feel that way. You built a life together, but you are more than just his wife. You're Amelia, and you deserve to find out what that means, whether with him or without him. Amelia's throat tightened. How do I figure that out? By giving yourself permission to feel everything, anger, sadness, confusion, and by taking one step at a time. You don't have to decide today or tomorrow. It's okay to be unsure. Amelia felt a glimmer of hope, fragile but real. I'm scared. Of forgiving him. Of never forgiving him. Of staying. Of leaving. That's the weight of betrayal, Dr. Thompson said gently. But the power to heal is yours. No one can take that from you. Amelia nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. For the first time in weeks, she felt the possibility of healing. Chapter 13. The Power of Truth Later. That evening, Amelia sat in her apartment, Daniel's words replaying in her mind. His pleas, his promises, his brokenness. She could hear his voice echoing. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us. She picked up her phone, her fingers trembling as she typed a message. I'm ready to talk. Tomorrow evening. My place. His reply came instantly. Thank you. I'll be there. The next day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel stood at her door, his face etched with worry and hope. He looked smaller somehow, as if carrying the weight of his guilt had diminished him. Amelia let him in, her heart pounding as he took a seat on the couch where they once shared lazy Sunday mornings. The familiarity was painful. "I'm here because I need the truth," she said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "All of it. No more lies. If you want any chance at redemption, you owe me that much." Daniel's shoulders sagged, his eyes glistening. "I understand. You deserve the truth, even if it makes you hate me more." He took a deep breath, his hands shaking. "It started 6 months ago. I felt disconnected. From you. From everything. Work was suffocating, and I was drowning in my own insecurities. Then she came along, Rebecca. She made me feel important, needed, and I was selfish. I chose the easy escape instead of facing my problems." Amelia's jaw tightened, her fists clenched. "How many times?" His voice broke. 5. It wasn't consistent, but every time I regretted it. Every time I hated myself. But I was too much of a coward to stop. Tears stung her eyes, rage bubbling up. "You came home to me. You kissed me. You slept beside me. How could you pretend everything was fine?" Daniel's face contorted with shame. "I don't have an excuse. I was a coward. I was selfish. And I betrayed the only person who ever truly loved me. I live with that guilt every day." Amelia's voice shook. "Did you love her?" He looked up, his eyes hollow. "No, I didn't. It wasn't about love. It was about escaping my own failures." She turned away, her shoulders trembling. "You destroyed us for nothing. For your own weakness." Daniel's tears fell, his voice cracking. "I know." The days that followed felt hollow, like Amelia was moving through a fog. She went through the motions, work, grocery shopping, paying bills, but her mind was somewhere else, stuck in a loop of memories and questions. Her apartment felt foreign, haunted by the ghost of her marriage. The couch where she and Daniel had spent countless evenings laughing, the kitchen where they cooked together, the bedroom where they whispered dreams and promises. Everything was tainted now, stained by his betrayal. She found herself reaching for her phone more times than she could count, her fingers hovering over his contact. But every time she stopped herself, her heart tightening at the thought of hearing his voice. One evening, as she stood by the window watching the city lights flicker below, her phone buzzed. Her heart skipped a beat, but it wasn't Daniel. It was Rebecca. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you. Please. It's important." Amelia's blood ran cold. Her first instinct was to delete the message, to block the number and never think about that. Woman again. But curiosity and anger got the better of her. "Fine. Tomorrow, 6 p.m., Coffee House on 5th. The reply was immediate. "Thank you. I'll be there." The next day, Amelia walked into the cafe, her heart pounding. Rebecca was already there, seated by the window, looking nervous. She was younger than Amelia expected, with soft brown curls and wide green eyes. It was hard to believe this woman had been a part of her husband's deception. Amelia approached the table, her posture rigid. "You wanted to talk. So talk." Rebecca's eyes were downcast. "Thank you for meeting me. I wasn't sure if you'd come." Amelia's jaw tightened. "Why did you contact me?" Rebecca looked up, guilt swimming in her eyes. "I needed you to hear it from me. I ended things with Daniel months ago, but I didn't know he was married. Not at first." Amelia's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that?" Rebecca's face flushed. "I know how it sounds, but it's the truth. When we met, he never mentioned you. He said he was single. It wasn't until after that I found out. By then, I was already involved." Amelia's chest tightened. "So you kept seeing him, even after you knew?" Shame flickered across Rebecca's face. "Yes. I was stupid. I thought, I don't know what I thought, that he would choose me? That we were meant to be? Her voice wavered. I was wrong. And I hurt you. I never wanted that. Amelia's throat burned with anger. You knew he was married and you kept going. You helped him lie. Don't act like you're innocent. Tears filled Rebecca's eyes. I know. I have no excuse. I needed you to know that it's over, that I walked away because I realized he would never stop lying, to you or to me. Amelia stared at her, trying to find some satisfaction in Rebecca's pain, but all she felt was emptiness. You were a part of this, but he's the one who broke his vows. He's the one who betrayed me. Rebecca nodded, her shoulders sagging. I'm so sorry, Amelia, for everything. Amelia stood, her hands shaking. Your apology doesn't change what happened. It doesn't fix anything. She turned to leave, but Rebecca's voice stopped her. There's something else you should know. Amelia hesitated, her heart pounding. What? Rebecca swallowed hard. I think you should check his finances. He lied to both of us, and I don't think it was just about the affair. Amelia's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? He was secretive. About money. He kept getting these strange calls, and he once mentioned something about debts. I didn't think much of it, but I don't think he was being honest about his finances. Not with me, and probably not with you either. Amelia felt the floor drop beneath her. Lies upon lies. What else had Daniel been hiding? Rebecca's eyes were filled with regret. I don't expect you to forgive me, but you deserve the truth. Amelia turned away, her mind spinning. She walked out of the cafe, the cold evening air biting at her skin. Daniel's betrayal went deeper than she realized, and now she needed to uncover the whole truth, no matter how devastating it might be. Chapter 15. Unraveling the web that night, Amelia sat at her desk, her laptop open as she logged into their joint bank account. Her hands trembled as she navigated through the transactions, her eyes scanning for anything unusual. At first, everything looked normal. Mortgage payments, grocery bills, dinners out. But then she saw them. Withdrawals she didn't recognize, payments to unfamiliar accounts, thousands of dollars gone without explanation. She dug deeper, her heart racing as she found more discrepancies. Transfers to offshore accounts, payments, labeled as consulting fees, but to companies she'd never heard of. The walls felt like they were closing in. Was he hiding debts, laundering money, or was it something worse? She printed out the statements. Amelia barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, images of Daniel's lies flashed before her, his secret accounts, his betrayal, his voice echoing with hollow excuses. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with questions she didn't know how to answer. By morning, her anger had crystallized into determination. If Daniel wouldn't give her the truth, she would find it herself. She called in sick to work, her voice steady as she lied about a fever. It felt bitter on her tongue. How easily she could slip into deception now. Was that how Daniel felt? Did he grow numb to his lies over time? Her laptop was already open, the printed bank statements spread out across her desk. She took a deep breath and began to piece together the puzzle, cross-referencing dates and amounts, highlighting the suspicious transactions. There was a pattern. Every few weeks, a large sum would disappear, labeled as consulting fees or investment transfers. But the accounts they were sent to were offshore, untraceable. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just about infidelity or debts. This was fraud. And Daniel had dragged her into it. Her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. It was her best friend, Emily. Amelia hesitated before answering. Hey. Emily's voice was gentle, cautious. I just heard, are you okay? Amelia's throat tightened. Who told you? Daniel came by the office yesterday. He looked terrible. He said you guys were going through a rough patch. A bitter laugh escaped Amelia's lips. Rough patch? Is that what he's calling it? Amelia. What happened? She sank into her chair, exhaustion washing over her. He cheated on me, Em, for months. And that's not even the worst of it. Emily's gasp was audible. Oh, my God. I had no idea. Amelia closed her eyes, the weight of everything pressing down on her. He's been lying about more than the affair. Money's missing, thousands of dollars. I think he's involved in something illegal. There was a pause before Emily whispered, You need to be careful. If he's hiding money, that could mean trouble. Legal trouble. Amelia shivered. I know. And I don't even know how deep this goes. Emily's voice hardened. You need help. Get a lawyer. Protect yourself. Amelia's chest tightened. The idea of involving lawyers made this feel even more real, more irreversible. But she couldn't ignore the danger. Not anymore. Yeah, she whispered. You're right. After hanging up, she looked at the documents scattered before her, her vision blurring. How had her life unraveled so completely? She pulled up her browser, searching for the name of a good divorce attorney. But as she typed, her fingers froze. Divorce. The word felt heavy, final. She remembered the day she married Daniel, the way his eyes shined with love, the way he promised to protect her, to be her partner through everything. Had it all been a lie? Her heart ached, torn between anger and heartbreak. She wasn't ready to say goodbye to the man she thought she knew, but she also couldn't ignore who he had become. Her phone buzzed again, a new text message lighting up the screen. It was from Daniel. We need to talk, please. I owe you the truth. Amelia's hands trembled as she read his words. She knew. She shouldn't trust him, knew he had manipulated her before. But she needed answers. She needed closure. Tomorrow, noon, at the house. She hit send before she could change her mind. Tomorrow, she would finally face him. And this time, she wouldn't leave without the truth. Chapter 17. Confrontation. Amelia stood outside their house, their home, the place where they built a life together. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked the door, stepping into the familiar hallway. Everything looked the same, but it felt different, colder. She heard footsteps, and Daniel appeared at the end of the hall. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Amelia! His voice was raw, pleading. Thank you for coming. She folded her arms, keeping her distance. You said you owed me the truth. Start talking. Daniel's shoulders sagged. He looked away, his gaze lingering on the wedding photo hanging on the wall. The two of them, smiling, happy, oblivious to the storm that would one day tear them apart. I never meant for any of this to happen, he began, his voice heavy. The affair. It was a mistake. I was weak, stupid. But the money, that's more complicated. Amelia's heart pounded. Complicated how? He took a deep breath. I got involved with some bad people. Made investments that went south. I tried to fix it, but the debts kept growing. I started transferring money, hiding it, trying to keep them off my back. Amelia's stomach turned. You're telling me we're in debt? How much? Daniel's eyes filled with shame. 200,000, maybe more. Amelia staggered, back, her head spinning. Are you serious? $200,000, and you didn't think to tell me? I was trying to protect you, he shouted. Amelia sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded, each beat echoing the chaos inside her mind. The sound of Daniel's sobs haunted her, but she pushed it aside, willing herself not to break. Not yet. The truth was out, and it was uglier than she'd imagined. $200,000 in debt, hidden accounts, lies upon lies. How long had he been living this double life? And who were these bad people he got involved with? A chill ran through her as she remembered the offshore accounts. This wasn't just about infidelity or debt. It was criminal. And she was connected to him, legally bound to his choices. Her phone buzzed, startling her. It was a message from her lawyer, Miranda Keene. "Got your email. Let's meet tomorrow. We need to talk about protecting your assets and yourself." Amelia exhaled, shakily. She hadn't wanted to take it this far, but Daniel had forced her hand. If he was involved in fraud, she couldn't risk going down with him. She started the engine, her resolve hardening. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. It was about survival. Chapter 19. Shadows of the Past. The cafe was quiet, sunlight filtering through the windows. Amelia sat across from Emily, her oldest friend, the only person she trusted right now. Emily's face was pale, her eyes wide, as Amelia recounted everything. "He's in debt to criminals and hiding money." "In offshore accounts?" Emily whispered, her fingers trembling as she gripped her coffee cup. Amelia nodded, her voice hollow. "I found the statements. He didn't even bother hiding them well. It's like he wanted me to find out." Emily's gaze softened. "Maybe he did. Maybe he's so deep in this mess that he's desperate for help." Amelia looked away, her chest tightening. "I don't know how to help him, or if I even want to." "You're scared." Amelia's eyes snapped back to Emily's. "Wouldn't you be? If the man you loved turned out to be a stranger?" Emily's expression grew distant, pain flickering across her face. "Yeah, I would be." Amelia frowned. "What is it? You're hiding something." Emily hesitated, her shoulders sagging. "I didn't want to tell you, but Daniel came to me last month. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. He asked to borrow money." Amelia's heart sank. "Why didn't you tell me?" I thought it was just a rough patch. I had no idea it was this serious." Emily's eyes filled with guilt. "He seemed so lost, Mel, like he was drowning." Amelia swallowed hard, her anger faltering. She pictured Daniel's hollow eyes, his pleading voice. How had she missed the signs? But then she remembered the affair, the lies, the secrets. Her heart hardened again. He brought this on himself. Emily reached across the table, her fingers brushing Amelia's. "Whatever happens, I'm here for you. Always." Amelia squeezed her hand, grateful for the one constant in her crumbling world. "I don't know what to do, Em. I don't know how to move forward." "You'll figure it out," Emily said softly. "You're stronger than you think." Amelia forced a smile, but doubt gnawed at her. Was she strong enough to face this? To face Daniel again? Chapter 20. Unraveling threads, Amelia sat across from Miranda Keene, her lawyer's office pristine and intimidating. Miranda's sharp eyes scanned the documents Amelia handed over, her lips tightening. "This is worse than I thought," Miranda muttered, setting the papers down. "Offshore accounts, fraudulent transfers. If this comes to light, Daniel could face prison time." Amelia's stomach lurched. "Prison?" Miranda's gaze softened. "Yes, and if you're not careful, you could get dragged down with him. You're legally bound to his financial decisions. If the authorities investigate, they'll look at both of you." Fear coiled in Amelia's chest. "I didn't know anything about this. I never touched those accounts." Miranda nodded. "Then we need to prove that. We'll separate your finances, file for legal protection, and you might want to consider filing for divorce." The word hung heavy in the air. Divorce. The end of everything she once believed in. Amelia's voice wavered. "Is that The only way to protect myself? It's the safest way, Miranda said gently. If he's involved in criminal activity, you don't want to be implicated. Divorce creates a legal boundary. Amelia's eyes burned with tears, her heart breaking all over again. I loved him. I still do. How did it come to this? Miranda's expression softened. Sometimes love isn't enough. Not when trust is broken. Amelia closed her eyes, her chest aching. Miranda was right. Trust was shattered, and there was no going back. Chapter 21. A world in shambles, Amelia returned to the house that night, exhaustion weighing her down. Daniel was there, sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up as she walked in, his eyes red and swollen. You talk to a lawyer, he whispered. I saw the paperwork. Amelia's jaw tightened. Amelia wandered aimlessly through the city streets, the chill of the evening air biting at her skin. Her thoughts swirled like a storm, each memory more painful than the last. The way Daniel used to hold her, whispering promises of forever. The nights they stayed up talking about their dreams, their future. All lies. Every word tainted by his betrayal. She found herself standing outside Emily's apartment. She hadn't planned to come here, but her feet had carried her to the one place. She still felt safe. Emily opened the door, her face softening with sympathy. Mel. Amelia's lip quivered, and she collapsed into her friend's arms, the dam finally breaking. The tears came hard and fast, years of trust and love crumbling to dust. I don't know who I am anymore, Amelia sobbed. I don't know how to live without him, but I can't live with him either. Emily held her tight, stroking her hair. You don't have to figure it out all at once, one day at a time. I'm here for you, whatever you decide. Amelia pulled back, wiping her swollen eyes. I talked to a lawyer. She thinks divorce is the safest option. Emily's face fell. Are you ready for that? Amelia's heart clenched. No, but I don't think I'll ever be ready. I need to protect myself. Emily nodded, her gaze firm. Then I'll help you through it, every step of the way. Amelia forced a broken smile. I don't deserve you. Emily's eyes shone with tears. Yes, you do. And you deserve to be happy again, Mel. Amelia looked away, doubt twisting inside her. Happiness felt so far away. Chapter 23. The First Step. The next morning, Amelia stood in front of her closet, staring at her wedding dress. It hung there pristine and beautiful, a ghost of the life she thought she had. A life that was never real. She ran her fingers over the delicate lace, her chest tightening. She remembered the way Daniel looked at her that day, his eyes shining with love. Or maybe she'd just imagined it. Maybe he was lying even then. Her phone buzzed, breaking her trance. It was a message from Miranda. We need to discuss the next steps. Have you decided? Amelia's hand shook as she typed her reply. Yes. Let's move forward with the divorce. She hit send before she could change her mind, her stomach churning. It felt like she was severing a part of herself, cutting away everything she knew. She grabbed the dress off the hanger and shoved it into a box, sealing it shut. It didn't belong in her life anymore. Just like Daniel. Chapter 24. Ghosts of the past, Amelia met Miranda at her office that afternoon, her hands trembling as she signed the first set of papers. Each stroke of her pen felt like a knife carving into her heart. Miranda watched her carefully. You're doing the right thing. This protects you no matter what happens with his legal troubles. Amelia swallowed, her throat tight. I know, but it still feels like I'm betraying him. Miranda's eyes softened. You're protecting yourself. That's not betrayal. That's survival. Amelia nodded, trying to believe it. What happens next? We file these with the court. Then we start the process of separating your finances. I'll make sure his debts don't fall on you. Amelia's stomach turned. How did I not see it? How did I not know who he really was? Miranda hesitated. Sometimes people show us who they want us to see, not who they really are. Amelia looked down, shame flooding her. I feel so stupid. You're not, Miranda said firmly. You trusted him. You loved him. That doesn't make you weak. Amelia blinked back tears. It feels like it does. Miranda reached out, her voice gentle. This will get easier. You'll find yourself again. Amelia wanted to believe her, but all she felt was hollow. Chapter 25. Confrontation. Amelia returned to the house that evening, dreading the conversation she knew she had to have. Daniel was there, pacing the living room, his eyes wild with desperation. He looked up as she entered, his face crumbling. Amelia, please, don't do this. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. I filed for divorce. Daniel's face went pale. No, we can fix this. We can get through it. Amelia's heart twisted, but she kept her voice steady. I can't trust you, Daniel. I don't even know who you are. He moved closer, his hands trembling. I'm still me. I'm still the man who loves you. She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. The man I loved wouldn't lie. He wouldn't cheat. He wouldn't ruin our life with secrets and debt. Daniel's shoulders slumped, his voice breaking. I was trying to protect you, to fix my mistakes before you found out. Amelia's anger flared. By dragging me into your mess, by putting us at risk? He reached for her, his eyes pleading. I was scared. I was so scared of losing you. Amelia stepped back, her heart shattering all over again. You already lost me, Daniel. The day you lied, the day you cheated, you lost me. The days that followed felt like moving through a fog. Amelia went through the motions, work, errands, packing her things. She stayed at Emily's, the guest room a stark reminder of her unraveling life. Her lawyer, Miranda, moved quickly, ensuring the divorce papers were served. Daniel didn't fight it. He didn't call, didn't show up at her door, didn't beg for another chance. He simply signed the documents and sent them back. Amelia didn't know if she was relieved or heartbroken, maybe both. One evening, as she was packing another box, her phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. Can we meet? Just once more. There are things I need to say. Her heart clenched. She knew she shouldn't go. She owed him nothing. But closure was a cruel, seductive promise. She texted back, tomorrow. The cafe on Main, 6 p.m. She stared at the screen long after the message was marked as read, wondering what could possibly be left to say. Chapter 27. Unfinished words. The cafe was quiet, the soft hum of jazz music blending with the muted conversations around her. Amelia arrived early, nerves twisting her stomach. She half hoped Daniel wouldn't show. But at 6:03 he walked through the door, looking like a shadow of himself. His shoulders were slumped, his face pale and hollow. He'd lost weight, his eyes rimmed with dark circles. He approached hesitantly, his hands shoved in his pockets. Hey, Amelia's throat tightened. Hi. He sat across from her, his eyes fixed on the table. Thanks for coming? She nodded, waiting. She wasn't going to make this easy for him. Daniel took a deep breath, his fingers fidgeting. I know. I'm the last person you want to see. I know I hurt you. More than I can ever fix. Amelia stayed silent, her jaw clenched. He looked up, his eyes glassy. I needed you to know that I never meant for any of this. I never meant to ruin us. Amelia's chest tightened, anger and sadness swirling inside her. Then why did you? Daniel's shoulders sagged. I was weak, stupid. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could hide my mistakes and fix them before you found out. Her eyes narrowed. Which mistakes, Daniel? The gambling? The cheating? The lies? He flinched. All of it. I was so scared of losing you. I did everything wrong. Amelia's hands trembled. You didn't just do everything wrong. You destroyed everything, our trust, our future. Me. Tears slipped down his face, his voice cracking. I know, and I hate myself for it. I wake up every day hating who I became. Amelia's resolve wavered, the love she still felt for him clawing at her. But she forced herself to stay firm. Do you think that makes it better? That your guilt somehow fixes this? Daniel shook his head, his shoulders shaking. No, I needed you to know that I never stopped loving you, not even for a second. Amelia's heart shattered, but she refused to let it show. You don't do that to someone you love. He looked away, wiping his face. I know. They sat in painful silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Daniel looked up, his eyes swollen. I won't fight the divorce. You deserve better than me. You always did. Amelia's throat tightened. She'd wanted him to fight, to prove he was willing to fix things. But maybe this was better. Maybe letting go was the only way to heal. She stood up, her voice trembling. Goodbye, Daniel. He looked up, pain etched into his face. Goodbye, Amelia. She walked out before her tears could fall, leaving him behind for the last time. Chapter 28. Picking up the pieces, Amelia moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. It was nothing like the house she shared with Daniel. No garden, no spare room they once imagined would be a nursery. It was just 4 walls and a roof, but it was hers, her space, her life. She kept herself busy. Work, therapy, dinners with Emily. She forced herself to build a new routine, a new normal. But the nights were the hardest. Alone in the dark, the memories would sneak up on her. The laughter, the whispers of love, the promises he made, the betrayal, the lies. Some nights, she hated him. Other nights, she hated herself for still missing him. But she was healing, bit by bit, one breath at a time. One evening, she found herself scrolling through old photos, the memories bittersweet. Her finger hovered over the delete button, but she couldn't bring herself to erase them. Not yet. She didn't know what the future held. If she'd ever learn to trust again, if the pain would ever truly fade. But she knew she couldn't stay in the past. Amelia set her phone down, wiping away a tear. She wasn't okay yet. But someday she would be. She had to believe that. Chapter 29. The echo remains. Months passed. The divorce was finalized quietly. Daniel moved away, leaving no forwarding address. Just like that, he was gone. Amelia expected to feel relief, but all she felt was hollow. She heard through mutual friends that he was struggling, that he'd sold his business to pay off his debts. The days that followed felt different. Lighter, in some strange way. Amelia had tossed the weight of her past into the lake and walked away, but it wasn't until she returned to her apartment that she felt the shift. It was as if the space around her had breathed life into her again. She started taking long walks in the park, visiting local art galleries on the weekends, and cooking meals for herself, something she'd forgotten to do in the thick of her marriage. One evening, Emily called, her voice urgent yet calm. I need to tell you something, Emily said. Amelia sat down, her heart already pounding. What happened? I don't know how to say this, Emily started, hesitating. But I think it's time you know. Daniel reached out to me last week. Amelia's chest tightened, a mixture of dread and confusion settling deep. What did he say? He's not doing well, Amelia. He's regretting everything. He's asking if there's a chance to fix things between you two. Amelia swallowed, hard, her heart torn between disbelief and bitterness. He asked you? Why didn't he ask me? Emily's voice softened. He's scared, Amelia. He's not asking for forgiveness. He's asking if you could ever trust him again. He's changed. Or at least, that's what he believes. There was a silence between them, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air like smoke. I don't know if I can forgive him, Emily. Amelia's voice cracked, the raw emotion she'd been keeping at bay slipping out. I don't know if I even want to. I'm not saying you have to. I just think you should know, Emily said. He's asking for something, but I'm not sure what that something is. Amelia was quiet for a long moment. She'd built so many walls around her heart, brick by brick, after everything that had happened. Could she ever let him back in? Could she ever trust him again? I'll think about it, she whispered, the decision lingering in her chest, still a question she didn't know how to answer. Chapter 31. The tipping point days blurred into weeks. Amelia kept herself busy, but the text messages and emails from Daniel kept coming, each one more pleading than the last. She ignored most of them, feeling the internal war brewing between wanting closure and needing to protect herself. But then, one night, when the apartment felt colder than usual and she was staring blankly at a half-packed suitcase she'd intended to use for a weekend getaway, she picked up her phone. There was a text from Daniel. Please, just meet me. No more messages. No more apologies. Just one last chance to talk. For closure. For us. Amelia stared at the message, the phone trembling in her hand. She had been avoiding him, running from the emotions he stirred up inside her. But something about the simplicity of his request broke through her defenses. She typed back, her hands shaking. I'll meet you. 8 p.m. The lake. It was the place where they had once promised forever. But now, it felt like a place to lay everything to rest. Chapter 32. The Lake. One last time. Amelia arrived at the lake just as the sky began to darken. The soft glow of the sunset reflected in the water, casting a faint orange hue across the surface. Daniel was already there, standing by the edge, his hands shoved into his jacket pockets. He turned when he heard her footsteps, his face weary but hopeful. Amelia! He breathed her name like a prayer. She didn't say anything. She simply walked over, her heart heavy but resolute. The familiar ache settled in her chest. She hadn't realized how much she had missed this version of him, the man she once loved without question. They stood in silence for a moment, the tension thick between them. Finally, Daniel spoke. I don't know what I expected coming here. I don't know if there's anything I can say that'll make it better. But I needed to see you again. To see if there was a chance that maybe, just maybe, you could forgive me. Amelia's eyes stung with unshed tears. I can't forgive you yet. I can't even promise I ever will. Daniel's expression faltered and he took a slow, shaky breath. I understand. I don't deserve it. She looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time in months, she could see the pain in his eyes, the remorse that had taken root deep inside him. I've been living with the guilt, the shame, he continued, his voice thick. And I don't want to keep living this way, but I can't ask you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm not the man I was. Amelia's heart hurt for him, but it also hurt for herself. She'd loved him once with everything she had, and the betrayal had been like a wound that never fully healed. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, Daniel, she whispered. You broke me. You broke us. A tear slipped from his eye. I know I did. And I'm so sorry. There was a long silence, the wind rustling the leaves around them, the lake now dark and still. Amelia looked out over the water, trying to collect her thoughts, her emotions a whirlwind inside. The days following that night by the lake passed slowly for Amelia, each one blending into the next. She tried to immerse herself in her work, but there was a constant hum in the back of her mind, a question that lingered, unanswered. What now? Her apartment, once a place of memories and shared laughter, now felt like an empty shell. The pictures of her and Daniel, framed and hanging on the walls, now looked like relics of a past life, one she wasn't sure she wanted to revisit. But as much as she wanted to forget, those remnants of him were all around her. She started packing, things away, bit by bit. The life they had built was slowly being dismantled, piece by piece, and she felt it in her bones, the finality of it. The empty shelves, the packed-up boxes, the silence that hung in the air. She wasn't sure if she was grieving what was lost, or what she'd never be able to reclaim. In the evenings, she found herself wandering to the lake. Sometimes, she would sit by the water for hours, watching the stars emerge one by one, the ripples on the surface matching the turbulence within her. The nights were quieter without Daniel's voice echoing in her head, and yet there was a restlessness that wouldn't let go. One evening, as she sat on the same bench where Daniel had once promised her forever, she noticed a figure walking toward her. It was familiar, a presence she knew all too well. Sophia, her longtime friend, and the one person who had always been there for her, stood before her, offering a half-smile. "I thought I'd find you here," Sophia said softly, sitting down beside her. "I heard about what happened. You all right?" Amelia nodded slowly, her gaze still fixed on the water. "I don't know. I guess I'm figuring it out. I thought I had all the answers, but now—" She sighed. "Now, I'm not so sure of anything." Sophia gave a small, understanding nod. "It's okay not to have everything figured out. It's okay to be lost for a while." She paused, glancing at Amelia. "But you are moving forward. You've made it this far." Amelia gave a faint smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm not sure forward is the right direction." She shrugged. "Maybe the right direction is just away from everything, from him." "From what we had?" "I don't know anymore." Sophia's hand found hers, a silent gesture of support. "Whatever it is, you'll figure it out. You always do." They sat in silence for a while, the quiet comfort of their friendship wrapping around Amelia like a blanket. Eventually, Sophia broke the stillness. "You know," she began hesitantly, "there's something I've been wanting to tell you. It's been on my mind for a while, and I don't know if now's the right time, but I think you need to hear it." Amelia turned to her, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "What is it?" Sophia shifted uncomfortably. "I've seen the way you've been handling everything, the way you've been carrying this weight, and I just want you to know it's not your fault. What happened between you and Daniel wasn't on you. You didn't deserve any of it." Amelia's throat tightened, the words hitting her harder than she expected. "I know that," she whispered. "But it doesn't feel like it. It feels like it was all my fault, like I could have seen it coming. Or maybe I should have done something differently. If only I had—" "No," Sophia interrupted, her voice firm. "You don't get to carry that. None of it was your fault. People make their own choices, Amelia. You can't carry the weight of their decisions." Amelia let the words wash over her. She didn't have all the answers, and she wasn't sure she ever would. But as she sat there with Sophia, the weight didn't feel so unbearable anymore. Chapter 34. The Unfinished Conversation. Weeks passed, and though Amelia's life wasn't immediately perfect, it began to settle into something that felt like a rhythm. Her apartment remained quiet, but it wasn't as hollow as before. She had found her own voice again, and though she still wasn't sure what her future held, she knew she didn't have to navigate it alone. Then, one evening, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something told her to answer it. "Amelia?" It was Daniel. His voice was different, fragile, as if he was walking a tightrope between desperation and resolve. "Hi," she said, her heart unexpectedly racing. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began. "About everything. About what we were. What I did. And I don't know if it means anything, but I need to say something." Amelia remained silent, unsure if she was ready for this conversation. "I'm not asking you to take me back," Daniel continued, "but I need to tell you that I see it now. What I did to you. And I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, or even to talk to me again. But I just needed you to know that you didn't deserve what happened." Amelia took a shaky breath, her fingers tightening around the phone. "I know you're sorry, Daniel. I know you regret it, but it's not enough. It never will be." Amelia's life had been divided into two parts, the before and the after. The before was filled with love and promises, with dreams and shared laughter. The after, though still raw and painful, was something else entirely. It was the story of survival, of rediscovery, and of a woman learning to trust herself again. But as time wore on, the weight of her past no longer held her back. The scars, while visible, had begun to fade, leaving only the lessons learned in their wake. One rainy afternoon, as she sat at the coffee shop she frequented, a familiar voice broke through her thoughts. "Amelia?" She turned, startled, to find a man standing at the entrance. He was tall, dressed casually in a coat, his dark hair slightly tousled by the rain. She recognized him immediately. "Elliot?" Her voice came out a little hoarse, unsure. He gave her a hesitant smile, as though unsure whether she would welcome him or not. "I know it's been a while. I didn't expect you to be here today, but You're the last person I thought I'd run into," she interrupted, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "I didn't mean to surprise you," he said, his tone apologetic. "I've been meaning to reach out, to see how you're doing. I didn't want to overstep." Amelia felt a mixture of emotions. Elliot had been a small part of her life in the months after her divorce. He was someone she had met at a work event, a quiet presence who had offered her an escape from her grief. But their connection had never deepened, at least not in the way either of them had expected. "I'm doing okay," she said, surprised by the honesty in her voice. She hadn't realized how much she needed to say that out loud until it came out. "Things are moving forward." Elliot smiled, his eyes softening. "That's good. Really good. I'm glad to hear it." They fell into an easy silence, the kind that comes from two people who understand each other without needing to say much. After a moment, he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "If you ever feel like talking or even just hanging out, I'm here. No pressure, just if you want it." Amelia met his gaze, her heart thudding unexpectedly. The weight of the past wasn't gone, not completely, but she could see that there was space for something new, for someone new. It wasn't about rushing or trying to fill the void left by Daniel's betrayal. It was about giving herself the chance to trust again. "Maybe," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips, "maybe I'll take you up on that offer sometime." Chapter 37. Moving forward. The weeks passed, and Amelia did indeed take Elliot up on his offer. They started meeting for coffee, then for dinner. Their conversations were easy, their laughter more frequent. He was kind, patient, and he never tried to rush anything. He didn't expect her to heal overnight, and he never pressured her to forget her past. Instead, he allowed her the space to be herself, raw, uncertain, and yet stronger than she had ever been. One evening, as they sat on a bench in a park, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Amelia found herself contemplating the future with a sense of hope she hadn't known in a long time. "You know," she began, her voice quiet as she turned to Elliot, "I didn't think I'd ever get to this point. After everything, I thought maybe I'd always carry the weight of it, but—" "But?" Elliot prompted, his voice gentle. "But I've learned to carry it differently," she said, her eyes searching the horizon. "It doesn't define me anymore. It's just part of the story. My story." Elliot nodded, understanding the depth of what she was saying. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Amelia," she smiled, though there was a touch of sadness in it, as if acknowledging that her strength had been forged through pain. "I think I've always been stronger than I realized. It's just a matter of owning it." They sat together in silence, for a few moments, each lost in their own thoughts, yet comforted by the presence of the other. "I've never really known how to move forward," Amelia said after a while. "I've always been afraid of what's next. Afraid of making the wrong choice, of trusting the wrong person." Elliot turned to her, his eyes steady. "And what if you trust yourself? What if you just let go of the fear of being wrong and simply trust what feels right?" Amelia looked at him, the words hanging in the air like a fragile thread between them. "What if it feels right?" she whispered. Elliot's response was a smile, slow and knowing. "Then maybe that's all that matters." Chapter 38. A glimpse of tomorrow. As the months wore on, Amelia's life continued to evolve. She no longer viewed each day with trepidation, wondering if the past would catch up with her. Instead, she started seeing herself not as a victim of her circumstances, but as the author of her own story. Her work flourished, her relationships deepened, and the quiet moments spent with Elliot became more frequent. The weeks that followed continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Amelia had grown accustomed to the rhythm of her new life. Her work was fulfilling, her friendships were strong, and her relationship with Elliot had blossomed into something more comfortable, if not entirely defined. She found herself smiling more often, her steps lighter than they had been in years. But even as the days felt warmer, there were still shadows in the corners of her mind, unresolved thoughts, lingering doubts. It was during one of these quiet evenings, when the air was thick with the warmth of summer and the hum of the city, outside, that Amelia found herself at a crossroads. She was at home, reading through some papers, when her phone buzzed. The name on the screen caught her off guard. Daniel. She hadn't spoken to him since the divorce, and the last time he'd reached out, it had been a brief, emotionally charged message. He'd apologized again, and she had refused to engage. But this time, the message was different. "Can we talk? It's important. I need to explain something to you. Please." She stared at the screen for a long time, her pulse quickening. The words sent a tremor through her. She hadn't expected this, not now, not when she had finally begun to find her balance again. There was a part of her that wanted to ignore it, to leave the past buried where it belonged. But there was another part, a curious, fragile part, that wanted to understand, to know what. Daniel had been holding back all this time. Taking a deep breath, she typed a quick reply. "What is it?" She didn't wait for long before his response came. "I'll be at the park in an hour. If you want to meet, I'll be there. I understand if you don't." Amelia closed her eyes, her mind racing. She had no idea what he wanted to say, but the urgency in his words was enough to pull her from her routine. There was something there, something he hadn't told her before. And despite herself, she felt the pull of unfinished business. Chapter 40. The encounter. An hour later, Amelia found herself standing at the park's entrance, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The park was empty, save for the few scattered joggers and late-night walkers. She spotted him almost immediately, a familiar figure standing by the large oak tree where they had once shared so many quiet moments. Daniel looked older, his face drawn with lines of stress that weren't there before. His eyes, when they met hers, held a mixture of apprehension and something else she couldn't place. He had always been good at hiding his emotions, but tonight, the mask seemed to have slipped. "I didn't think you'd come," he said quietly. As she approached, his voice tinged with guilt. Amelia didn't answer immediately. She simply nodded, taking a moment to collect herself. "What did you want to tell me, Daniel?" He hesitated, clearly struggling with his words. I owe you more than just an apology. I owe you the truth. The whole truth." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what she expected, but this wasn't it. The truth about what? Daniel glanced down, his fingers fidgeting with the edge of his jacket. "I never told you everything about why I did what I did, why I hurt you the way I did. It wasn't just me being selfish or confused. There was something that led me to make those choices. And I've been carrying that guilt for years." Amelia's pulse quickened, her mind a storm of questions. "What are you talking about?" He swallowed hard, finally meeting her gaze. "It wasn't just Claire. She wasn't the only reason. There was someone else. Someone I shouldn't have trusted. Someone who manipulated me into thinking I had no other choice. Someone who helped cover everything up." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The name that had been hovering at the edges of her consciousness, the one she'd never been able to place, suddenly clicked. Who? Daniel's face tightened, and for a moment he seemed to be fighting against something deep inside. But then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Elliot." The name fell between them like a stone. Amelia stood frozen, unable to process what she had just heard. Elliot? The same man who had been a part of her life for the past few months? The man she had started to trust? "No," Amelia said, shaking her head as if the words themselves could reverse the reality Daniel had just revealed. "That doesn't make sense. Why would Elliot—" "I didn't know then, Amelia. I didn't know what he was doing. But I see it now. He was the one pulling the strings behind everything that led me to betray you." Amelia took a step back, the weight of the words settling in. This was too much, too impossible. "Are you telling me that Elliot knew everything? That he—" "Yes," Daniel cut in, his voice frantic now. "He knew about Claire. He knew about the affair. And he manipulated me into thinking it was the only way out. He fed me lies, told me that you'd never forgive me, that there was no going back." Elliot's voice trembled through the phone, but his words were steady. "What's going on, Amelia? You sound different." Amelia's fingers tightened around the phone, the weight of the night pressing down on her like a vice. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment when the lies would unravel and the truth would finally be revealed. But as she stood at the edge, ready to dive in, doubt crept in. What if she was wrong? What if Daniel had misinterpreted everything? Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? "I need you to meet me," she said, trying to steady her breath. "I need to see you in person. There are things I have to ask you." There was a pause on the other end, a crackling silence before Elliot spoke. "I'm on my way." "Where?" "The park," she replied, her voice sharp. "Give me 20 minutes. She hung up before he could say another word, pacing in her apartment, her mind racing. The questions were endless. How could Elliot be involved in this? What had Daniel meant by saying Elliot had been the one behind it all? And what would this confrontation do to their already fragile relationship? Despite the uncertainty gnawing at her, Amelia knew one thing for certain. She couldn't keep living in the fog. She needed answers, even if they shattered everything she had built in the last few months. Chapter 43. The Meeting. The park was quieter now, the hum of the city swallowed by the thick shadows that cloaked the walking paths. Amelia stood near the oak tree, her eyes scanning the surroundings, her mind still processing the revelation. Every minute felt like an eternity, and when Elliot finally appeared, his figure emerging from the darkness, Amelia's pulse spiked. "Amelia," he said, his voice low, but there was no warmth in it. There had been no tenderness in his tone since her initial call. His hands were shoved into the pockets of his coat, and his face, normally calm and controlled, was tight, his jaw clenched. "Elliot," she said, her words steady despite the fear that lurked just beneath the surface. "I need to know the truth. About everything." Elliot looked at her, his eyes guarded. "What are you talking about?" Amelia's heart hammered in her chest as she took a step closer. "I spoke to Daniel tonight. He told me everything. About you. About what you did." The silence stretched, between them thick and suffocating. Elliot's eyes flickered, his shoulders stiffened. But he didn't speak. Not at first. "What exactly did he tell you?" he finally asked, his voice too calm, too controlled. Amelia's stomach churned. She wanted to reach out and shake him, to force him to speak the truth, but she held herself back. "He said you were the one who manipulated him, that you were the one who made him believe there was no way out, that you were the one who covered up everything, that you—" She paused, taking a shaky breath. "You were the one who kept us apart." Elliot's expression didn't change. He didn't deny it, and that silence, the absence of a defense, spoke volumes. "I didn't want to hurt you, Amelia," Elliot finally said, his voice breaking slightly, betraying his calm exterior. "You have to understand. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Amelia repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. "By lying to me? By encouraging Daniel to betray me? That's how you protect someone?" Elliot's eyes softened, but there was no apology in them. "I didn't want to see you go through what Daniel did to you. I couldn't watch you suffer anymore. I thought if I helped him get away, maybe you could move on. Maybe you could heal without him. And in the end, I thought it was the only way." Amelia took a step back, her chest tightening with emotion. "And what about us, Elliot? What about what we were building?" He looked at her, his gaze intense but unreadable. "I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think it would hurt you this much." The words hung in the air, suffocating her with their weight. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but she couldn't. She had no more words left, just a hollow ache where trust had once been. "You destroyed everything, Elliot," she said quietly, tears welling in her eyes. "You destroyed me." Elliot stepped closer, his voice pleading. "Amelia, please. I never meant for it to happen this way. I thought I was helping you. I thought—" "You were never helping me," she interrupted, her voice shaking. "You were protecting yourself, and maybe Daniel too. But you didn't protect me. You betrayed me, Elliot." He fell silent then, and for a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind rustling the leaves in the trees. Amelia wanted to walk away, to end the conversation, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. "Not yet. I trusted you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "And now I don't know if I can ever trust anyone again." Elliot looked at her, his face twisted with regret. "I'm sorry, Amelia. I'm so sorry." She shook her head. "Sorry isn't enough anymore.